Hello viewers and welcome to a new episode of Trashtalk on Flying Circus, Chariot of Steel Edition, a series that's all about discussing the good and very bad of the many tanks and tank-like vehicles you can find in the Chariot of Steel expansion for Flying Circus. In today's episode, AM-95 Kleinerpanzer, and Riesenräder attack vehicle. Let's start with the Kleinerpanzer first. Year introduced, 1595, served with, Macchi Republics, engine, Meyer Windhund, strengths, disproportionate firepower, weaknesses, proportionate armor. The Kleinerpanzer originated as the KT-89, an artillery tractor and militarization of a Recht AG light farming tractor received as payment for Macchi's support of the UWF. The KT-89 ability to rapidly reposition batteries was vital to Macchi's successes in Han Riot against the ex-UWF colony and, later, the Rona Pact. As the war turned and Macchi forces were increasingly chased back onto the peninsula, there was a pressing need for as much armor as possible to hold against the slash and burn offensives of the Rona Pact. KT-89s were rapidly rebuilt as the AM-95, given new engines and a thin armored shell, and were used as patrol vehicles and mobile gun positions. They were especially effective in accompanying infantry assaults, parking behind recently seized trenches to blunt counterattacks, but these actions grew less and less successful as the war dragged on. Ultimately, most AM-95s found themselves relegated to the same role as the KT-89, towing artillery pieces and wagons of despondent troops north to be evacuated to the islands. Resented as a symbol of Macchi's failed war industry, many were simply left at the dockyards, abandoned for lack of fuel, or even dumped overboard to make room. Every time I heard the word Kleinerpanzer, I also just hear the word Kleenex, which also perfectly describe how much protection these tiny tanks get. The Kleinerpanzer is of course, fast, not top speed, but fast, and has very good handling and torque, but with a 211 armor profile and integrity of only 15, even an infantry support cannon can set this thing on fire easily, and even just raw damage from a 10 rifleman squad at the wrong angle can tear this thing apart. This thing is the weakest pre-made tanks in the game. You do not want to get hit, at all. At the very least, the engine is quite reliable, plenty of fuel to get the heck out of Dodge, and it is quite cheap to purchase and run. Now here comes what most people desire when getting the Kleinerpanzer, a bucket load of guns. This tiny tank has 2 crew and 3 guns, the driver get their own LMG, the gunner has a forward-mounted infantry support cannon, and there's a big-ass pub machine gun sticking out on top of the tank for anyone to get up and fire in any direction. It is a staggering amount of firepower and you will put out a lot of damage, as long as nobody shoots at you and ruins your day. Just to further discourage you from getting shot, look at the escape stat. The Turbo Panzer has +3 to escape for all crew, the Aluminier still has positive escape stats, the Kleinerpanzer, being a cramped little shit can, has negative escape stats, meaning as soon as this thing is on fire, you probably don't want to stay behind to put it out because by the time you decide to get out, it might be too late. That said, due to how tiny the Kleinerpanzer is, any weapon with artillery which includes any of these have -1 in hitting the damn thing. However, anything else do not have this limit. Do not get shot up by machine guns. Also, while the gun post is going to be a good damage source for you, having someone firing it while in motion is not gonna be good for them, as this counts as wing walking, meaning they have to fire the gun with daring instead of hard, which to be fair, you do need to be very daring to be standing on top of something wobbling while fully exposed to gunfire with zero cover. This basically means that you can't have a random crew or infantry getting up to fire it in motion, you have to sit still, like a tank destroyer, which this thing is. The speed is more for getting the fuck out of situation, and considering how weak the side and rear armor of this thing is, going hull down probably increase your survivability more, turning that frontal 2 armor into a 3, though when anything with field gun shows up, you should start running. In short, it's a tiny tank with a lot of firepower. Use that speed to surprise people from unexpected angle and then get the hell out before they can reply back with bullets and shells of their own. In fact, you could even add more guns since this tiny tank has 2 hatches for the crew too, though at that point, it might be too much. As for how to deal with this thing on the other side, a smart enemy would use this as a hit-and-run ambusher, only firing when you least expect it. If you have a field gun, you could easily turn this tank into a burning wreck. You might think that having infantry to track it down would be a good idea, but the driver has LMG and there's a pub machine guns on top and that can be a real danger to infantry on the move. So the second best thing is to have speedy light tank of your own to chase it down and have a tank duel, which the Kleinerpanzer is weak at with its frontal mounted cannon, and whoever on top can be easily dispatched. As for the modifications, there's the AMC 95/2 self-propelled gun carriage, which remove the driver LMG, replace the cannon with water-cooled machine gun, and replace the pub machine gun with a goddamn field cannon with gun shield, as well as adding in another post for loader. Now you can snipe even harder and faster with at least some protection. However, ammunition must be carried externally, meaning you need a bunch of ammo carriers and a truck full of munitions around, and also the hatches are removed, making it even harder to escape, and the poor tank is overloaded as heck, making it slower and harder to climb over hill. Bigger gun in exchange for worse everything else basically. Next there's the partisan mods, which replace the pub machine gun and infantry support cannon with a bunch of rocket racks, whether that's 4 anti-air volley rocket launcher, or 4 anti-tank recoilless cannon, or 6 rocket artillery rail to blast a grid square to hell. You can fire the rocket one at a time, or a number of them at once, or even just all of them together for maximum damage. If you fire more than half of them at once, this also create a smoke screen, perfect for you to escape because it's not like you can see anything to fire the rest anyway. The rocket must be reloaded from the outside, and no ammo can be carried inside. In short, can deal a devastating amount of damage, but you will need to learn how to logistic on field, fast. Next up, let's talk about this thing. Year introduced, 1586, served with UWF engine, 2 Skyline diesels, strengths, hard to destroy, weaknesses, easy to damage. As the war turned against them, a desperate United Western Federation deliberately opened the sluice gates holding back the ocean to slow the enemy's advance in southern Dorand. For over a year, fighting ground to a halt as forces retreated to isolated hills or out of affected areas, with the majority of land flooded 2.5 meters deep with salt water. It was into this environment the Riesenräder was first deployed. While not a tank in the traditionally recognized sense, this ungainly UWF machine is certainly a direct predecessor. Originally designed in 1579 but considered impractical, the design was resurrected 6 years later along the southern front. With its elevated crew compartment and enormous wheels, the vehicle seemed perfectly suited to wading through the waters and launching attacks on isolated enemy camps in the region. However, the machine's many weaknesses soon got the better of it: its unreliability, tendency to bog down in mud from high ground pressure, and relatively thin armor meant it was far less threatening to prepared enemy forces. They were recalled to be up-armored after just 1 year, but the sluice gates were seized and closed not long after, and the machines were captured, destroyed, or left abandoned in the field. Where the fuck do I even begin with this? What the hell am I even looking at? This Tricycle disaster is based on the Tsar tank, a Russian tank with the idea of having a pair of wheels so huge that it can cross over any obstacle from sheer size. Unfortunately, the wheel itself also has to obey cube square law, and the entire thing immediately bogged down in soft mud. The one and only Tsar tank basically got stuck on its own test site, as nothing else could even move the 60-ton paperweight, and it got scrapped 6 years after the Soviet Union was established. So much like the K-Wagon, the only proof of its existence is just pictures now. So, with a history like that, you are probably confused as to why the Riesenräder has speed 3, well, that's its top speed, but top speed is a lot different than controllable speed, which I will get to later. It also has 0 torque, which is, okay, I suppose, with the worst handling out of all tanks in this book, so don't expect the possibility of outturning anything, including stationary buildings. It has 222 armor profile, which means a lot of big guns will poke holes in this thing, but it also has a staggering 50 integrity, the same as the Drachentotter, making this thing nearly indestructible, but also half the time, your crew will be struggling to put nuts and bolts back in place or patch up anyone that got wounded by said nuts and bolts flying into their face. The crew feels pretty damn invincible in this thing, despite clearly not. The engine could be more reliable. It does have a lot of fuel, so no need for an army of trucks, and, thankfully, it is cheap, though running it will be quite expensive with its base upkeep and the sheer amount of crew you require. As for weapons, this thing has a huge amount of it. In this towering cupola, you have 4 machine gunners manning a water-cooled machine guns each facing a single arc, and on the bottom, there's a single gunner manning a dual WMG turret, capable of aiming forward, left, right, and straight down in case anyone think they are smart. There's also 2 field gun turrets on the sides, capable of aiming forward, rear, and the side directions. This means the Riesenräder has good weapon coverage in every direction, for both anti-tank and anti-infantry purpose. While this thing is easy to damage, it also technically has no weakness. There's no advantage to gain from flanking this towering beast. Even its armor is the same in any direction, though that's more because it's the same weak armor in every direction, so there's no point going around. Of course, with this many guns, means you need many crews. This thing's need 10 crew to run. You can probably cut the top cupola gunner down to 2 for a total of 8, but that's still a lot of people, and with how easy it is for this thing to take damage, you might find yourself running out of healthy crew very quickly once a fight start, so you gonna need more bodies anyway. You probably saw this coming already, but the Riesenräder only has one trait, and it's all about its wheels. The wading wheels, unlike the real-life version, gives the Riesenräder ability to ford deep river like it was nothing, meaning you can technically use this as a boat, just don't go to the sea, and also makes it immune to melee attack because it's too damn tall unless someone is playing Shadow of Colossus. It also subtracts 1 from incoming damage confirmation roll, making it even tougher, and it probably needs this to stay alive longer really, and must build up speed over the course of several minutes. Turning will drop the speed to 1, and when it's above 1, this thing cannot avoid obstacle and must take several hundreds meters to stop, meaning you will be driving this thing at speed 1 most of the time if you want to have the ability to even turn the damn thing at all. However, this also means that if you want this thing to move, it will move, driver or no driver, anything in front of it be damned, until it gets jammed on something, which is a very likely case with its torque. Also, starting the engine takes 2 people at once, so even just starting up will be a pain with this thing. I do found it funny that this trait didn't mention that it's technically impossible for you to go hull down, because with something this tall, how the fuck are you supposed to do that? In summary, the Riesenräder is, by itself, a near indestructible tank. However, you will soon find out that everything else on this tank, including your crew, and you, is not. At least it has a ton of firepower on the cheaper side, I guess. To be completely honest though, I think the biggest advantage you get when riding in a Riesenräder is that the enemy will just stop for a moment and wonder what the actual hell are they looking at. As for how to deal with this thing, a Riesenräder on the enemy side is gonna be a big problem, as the GM don't exactly need to manage post-battle cleanup or repair or something like that. This thing is big, it's huge, you need big damage in one go to really rip this thing apart, and doing a lot of relatively small damage is going to let this thing pummel your formation to hell. Luckily, there's one thing that can do that. Surprisingly, this thing has a variant, a Goth refit variant that replaces the cannon with land flammenwerfers and the cupola gunners with a single heat ray repeating cannon that can aim in any direction. This thing is a goddamn Martian tripod now, don't stay too close and you should be fine, which is easier said than done with how hard it is to stop this thing. And that's basically it on these 2 tanks, the truly tiny AM-95 Kleinerpanzer with a ridiculous amount of firepower in small package, and the waiting Riesenräder attack vehicle that will never ever stop, even when it wants to. Anyway, that's all for now, and I will see you all next time. Hello there, if you like this video, please subscribe and click that notification bell button. If you want to see the videos early as well as further support my channel, you can join in my Patreon page, or buy me some coffee, links in the description. Anyway, have a nice day.